Okay, currently with plunging fire being a thing and we're after every bit of AP we can get, plus I've been having fun with snipers and Vindicare assassins, I'm going to make something lofty, something inspired by movies where marksmen use bell towers to get an excellent vantage point to shoot the enemy, like in Saving Private Ryan, which, while very effective, well, it didn't end too well, but it's still an awesome scene. Or in Kelly's Heroes, which went down a lot better. And this has me inspired to definitely get a bell up there. I still have some thick and some thin pink insulation foam. Let's see what we can do with it. First up, a quick doodle to get a basic plan laid out. Here we go, this is what I'm kinda aiming for. Right, grabbing the thick piece. I divided it in two from corner to corner to get me a pair of towering ragged walls. I placed one against the other to mark out where they will be glued together so I can plan out the windows accurately. The internal floors will be made of the thinner foam and I'm going to situate them 6 inches apart from surface to surface to facilitate travel from level to level. 6-inch move seems to be about average these days. With these levels mapped out, let's get some windows in there. The ground floor won't have any, giving some obscure in there. For the rest, 1/2 inch from the floor to the sill, then 1.5 inches straight up, and the next 1.5 inches the windows arch and meet. The windows are 1.5 inches wide, but for the top floor they're going to be just 1/2 inch wide and separated by 1/2 inch of wall to let the sound of the bell just ring out across the land. Once everything was drawn out, breaking out the X-Acto and the knife to dig in and saw around, removing all of that foam. Now, how to move from floor to floor. This solution comes in the form of some plastic play tennis rackets I found on clearance at the supermarket. Grabbing the wire cutters, I extracted a long string to see how it might look. Back to the foam. I started cutting little V-shaped slots along where the walls were demolished and more of the same radiating out from the windows. Then some structural supports to break up those smooth, open and featureless areas. I cut out a couple of thin square struts, started to gouge them up with the V-shaped grooves, cut a 45-degree angle at one end and then glued them in place and then assembled the two main walls by adding a nice thick layer of Elmer's and then pushing them together. To make sure everything stays in place, I taped the structure down to the cutting board and then added more blue masking tape to make sure the walls stay pressed together as the glue dries. Then I cut out some floors and using a small screwdriver, I started scraping around, creating bullet holes and heavy weapon impacts, scrapes, gouges and other signs of acute battle damage. Slotting in the foam, marking out the rough shape I want for the floor and then cutting it out was the way to go. I added the damage to each one and also cut out a small square that will be the access where the ladder reaches up to. Also, sliding in the X-Acto horizontally just a little down from the surface and then sawing aside before bending up breaks off shallow pockets, getting this sort of damage effect. Okay, back to the rackets. I cut out some more lines and then levied the blade to the side and just slid along like I'm whittling, trimming off the stubs and getting a nice smooth ladder-like edge. Now, the belfry. I was going to have a piece of foam going across with maybe a wooden barbecue skewer underneath to give me something solid to superglue the bell to. But then I remembered all the terrain I have lent the Laughing Dragon game store, and specifically the bits that have broken off from constant use. I can see the bell being a casualty when the glue finally gives out, so I need something more durable, and so I'm going to add an actual roof here. I trimmed off a section, added the damage and slotted it into place to make sure it fits. I found this awesome bell for free online. It comes in just 1/2, so I mirrored it and printed both, and then glued them together. Then I broke out the Mr. Dissolved putty and applied it along the seam to get rid of the connection line. Well, not get rid of, but at least make it less visible. I then glued the internal floors into position and added blue tape to keep them in position while they dry. With the bell assembled, off to the boot box for a quick spray of Chaos Black primer. While that dries, back to trimming down the ladders and cutting them to the correct size. Seeing as I have a printer now, why not have a little more fun? I printed a couple of Aquila and glued them above the belfry windows, links in the description. One of them I broke off a wing just to make them look a little more apt for a shattered semi-demolished bell tower. Okay, Mod Podge and a squirt of white acrylic and a hefty squirt of black. Stir it up, and with a big fat brush I started dabbing it all over the model, and then used a smaller brush to get into the cracks and holes and get a comprehensive layer of colour over the whole thing. Now for a base, a piece of chipboard. I placed the tower on it and marked out the shape I wanted to get, cut it out, added glue to the underside of the bell tower and placed it on the chipboard. Then a squirt of Elmer's on the base where the walls meet it, and then sprinkle on the leftovers from gouging and cutting up the foam. All of those little pieces and slices make excellent debris piles. Mounds of rubble from when the building collapsed, either from artillery or perhaps from the assault of a potent psyker who, like Richard Burton in the Medusa Touch, pummeled and collapsed this cathedral via malicious telekinetic will alone. The power of his very mind, smashing glass, splintering wood, and even cracking solid stone until the entire structure falls inward, slaughtering all those still trapped within. Once the glue was dry, back with the big brush and dabbing on the Mod Podge and acrylic mixture onto the debris. While all this dries off, the boot box is back and the plastic ladders get a blast of primer. Okay, a watery mixture of black acrylic, no Mod Podge, and then applied all over the structure, focusing on pooling it up in the holes and the cracks. First the horizontal floors and then side by side, applying it to the walls that are face up so that the acrylic pools nicely in the battle damage, and when dry, rotate it to the next face and then add more, and so on until the whole thing has been covered. This is also good to conceal those little glimpses of pink really deep inside an area of damage. The mixture just settles in and dries to hide it. Then a bit of white added to the Mod Podge mixture, and then a decent dry brush over the structure. Add some more white, give it another less comprehensive dry brush, and then a final squirt of white to get a light grey, and then a dry brush just to the main edges, corners and features. And then an idea. Not only is the bell a bit small, but the seam is still pretty visible. So I imported it back into Lychee, enlarged it, made a copy of the bell half, and then mirrored it, and then just moved the two pieces together. Hopefully the printer will just see a seamless single item and print it in one go. I added a few medium-sized supports to ensure the print succeeds, and it came out grand, smooth and huge. To attach the bell to the roof, some metal wire. Folded at the middle around the chair leg, the other ends are inserted into a drill and then tightened up so that it's holding the wire ends, and a quick whirl creates a nice woven rope-like strand. Drill a wire-sized hole in the top of the bell, insert the wire, and then inside add a nice blob of super glue to lock it in place. I used the rest of the wire to pierce the ceiling. After a blast of primer, a layer of black acrylic painted over the larger bell, and then applied to the three ladders as well. Now, I want the second floor to have the option of being obscuring as well, so I'm going to seal the windows with wooden planks and panels. Lollipop sticks of several sizes and some pieces of balsa wood. Using the wire cutters, I trimmed away the rounded ends and cut them to size, and then started using an X-Acto to cut little V-shaped grooves in a bunch of the ends. Then I painted them with Morn Fang Brown. The ladders get a dry brush of Iron Hand steel base, and so too does the bell and the wire. Then a wash of Seraphim Sepia shade on the planks and other bits of wood. Okay, time to apply the bell. I inserted the wire through the hole and then bent the ½ an inch or so of excess over to a 45-degree angle so that it runs along the edge of one of the splits. A large blob of acrylic to lock it there, but it's still visible, and so a sprinkle of foam debris over it to conceal that wire. While that dries, a dry brush of Ungor flesh to the ends of the planks and the edges of the panels. Then dabs of Elmer's and seal up the windows from without, add the panels within and superglue the ladders into place. The layer of paint and Mod Podge protecting the foam from the corrosive effects of the superglue. Okay, here we are, the remnants of the lofty Imperial Belltower. The dense outer walls have been smashed by years of brutal warfare. The interior floors have also collapsed to a larger extent, leaving only a few ragged trapdoors where ladders still permit access throughout the tower. A single bell remains in the uppermost floor, used to warn the troops in the area of impending attack. But also, snipers have found shelter and a perfect vantage point from which to pick off enemy troops, whether Imperial Guard marksmen or elite Vindicare assassins who lurk in concealment for days or even weeks, waiting for the moment to take that perfect single shot to execute their duty and neutralize their target. The second floor has been fortified to provide shelter with wooden planks and panels, offering some semblance of concealment and protection. And it is here that we find the Tyrannid Hive Guard have ensconced themselves, launching impaler cannon into the sky, the living projectiles hunting down their targets as biovores on the ground launch spore mines high through the air and into the foe.